Hey guys, thanks for taking some time today to watch this short video as we have had our first full week or having our first full week of chronological Bible reading here in 2023. All kinds of stuff going on this week as we read through Genesis chapter 4 all the way through the end of Genesis chapter 11, and then we skip over to Job, the book of Job, and read from chapter 1 through 16. Lots of minor things going on in here, lots of major things going on here. The big, huge storylines that we see in these chapters that we're reading through this week is the beginning of life outside the garden. Life will never be the same for humanity. Life one day does return back, but that's at the end of the year, and the celebration that we have as Jesus brings all things back to the way that they were intended to be. But now in the reading that we're in right now, we see that life outside the garden has begun. It starts instantly with kind of the account of some of Adam and Eve's sons, Cain and Abel, and what happens with them. The Bible then goes on to say not long after that every inclination of man's heart is evil from childhood. And we see kind of this truth spread, and that the world is totally corrupt. There's worldwide wickedness everywhere. And God says that he regrets making the earth. And so God says he's going to flood the earth to wipe out humanity, which is completely wicked at this point. However, Noah. And we see the account of Noah and the worldwide flood, which is an incredible story. And so enjoy reading through that. Then we see the Tower of Babel, where the people have decided that they are not going to move in the way that God has told them to move. The Tower of Babel begins to be built up or erected, man trying to build himself his own tower, and God steps in grace and stops and shuts that down. This is kind of the beginning of different language groups and different people groups. And this leads all the way up to the lineage of Abram. And it looks like we're going to read into the line of Abram. However, we see our first major twist away from just reading the Bible in regular fashion here. And we go from the end of Genesis 11 over to the book of Job. We start the account with Job that the Bible says is the greatest man in all the East. It says that he's a righteous man, that he's an upright man, and that he fears and shuns evil. After getting the account of Job, we see that Satan arrogantly strolls into the place of God with the angels, has a little encounter with God, mocks God a little bit, and then God, for reasons that we don't necessarily know, allows Satan to attack this upright and righteous man, Job. We see the attacks are allowed and are given. However, God gives great prohibitions on those as well. In the midst of those attacks and in the pain that Job is suffering, we see that Job's friends show up to the scene, and at first they just sit there silently amazed at this man that they know who no longer looks like himself. But then eventually they speak up and they say some things to them, and we see kind of for the next couple chapters as Job has back and forth responses with his friends who say some things to him. This brings up probably a pretty major question to a lot of us here. Why is Job here? Why don't we just continue on going from Genesis 11 and go on into Genesis 12, which is the beginning of Abram's story? Why does it skip over chronological order going from the end of 11 to Job chapter 1? It's a great question. And honestly, we have some history that goes into the reasoning here. And a lot of the clues that we find for the reasoning of Job being at this spot at the end of Genesis 11 are found in the book of Genesis. And some of those clues are his wealth is not measured in terms of silver and gold. Job's wealth, it says he's extremely wealthy, is measured in the form of flocks and of herds, not of silver and gold. We see that he is his family priest. He's the one that offers sacrifices for them, that prays for them, very much like we see in Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. There is no mention of a priestly system. He makes no mention of the Mosaic law, which definitely has a huge account coming up here in a couple weeks. We see that the name that he uses for God is El Shaddai. This is a very old name of God. We know that in Exodus, as God talks to Moses, he gives another name by which he'll be known by. But the name that Job consistently uses for God is El Shaddai, pointing back to really the times of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, probably even before Abraham. And the reason I say before Abraham is one of the things that we see is that as Job is there and Satan has been allowed to attack Job, we see that he is attacked by a certain people group, the people of the Chaldeans. And it very clearly says that the Chaldeans are a nomadic group, meaning that they have not settled in a place yet, that they're moving east, probably from the time of the Tower of Babel, moving east. Interesting that the Chaldeans are Abram's people group. It's the people group that Abram will be called out of. But they attack Job, but they're not a settled people yet. They're a nomadic group. And so that's why we put all those clues lead us to putting Job back towards the end of Genesis 11. And so that's a major twist there, a big major change for us as we read through the scriptures. All kinds of good stuff going on, all kinds of encouraging things. One of the most encouraging things that I've seen so far in this week's reading happens right there in Genesis chapter 6, specifically verse 8. It says that every man does only evil, is inclined to evil in his heart from childhood all the way through the rest of his life. And you remember reading this story, and it says the whole world is wicked and corrupt, and that God regrets making people and putting them on the earth, and he's going to wipe them out completely. But then two little words, but Noah. What a beautiful, beautiful story we see right there, but Noah. And what that shows me, and what that should show all of us and remind all of us, is that no matter how bad things look, no matter how serious or how heavy or how scary or all things go, no matter how deep your sin goes, and I'm not making light of sin, but I'm making heavier on God. No matter how much any of those things are true, none of them can impact the promises of God. Last week, we read in Genesis chapter 3 that God had promised one day that one would come from the seed of Eve, and that he would one day crush the head of the enemy forever and ever. God could not wipe out all of humanity in that worldwide flood because that would have been a promise breaker. But God is a promise keeper. And so I hope that you're encouraged by this promise-keeping God this week as you get to look into his word and learn more about him, more about yourself, more about humanity, as we can look forward to the days one day when we gather with Jesus and we can celebrate this promise-keeping God. And so guys, this is a very difficult challenge for us as we read through the book of Job and break our normal fashion of reading through the scriptures. Job is not an easy book. It is a very difficult book. And so take your time on this. Give yourself time. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Show yourself grace because the Lord does and the Lord will. Pick back up where you have. I look forward to seeing you this next week as we find and pull one of these stories together. Bring your questions, bring your answers for others, bring your insights as we continue to have the blessing of learning God and reading his word together. Thank you guys so much. Continue to pray for each other. There's a lot of hurt in our congregation right now. Pray for each other. Pray for yourself. Trust in the Lord and find him in his scriptures as we celebrate the life he's given us together. Thanks guys for watching this, and I'll see you on Sunday. Bye.